Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Traffic Board public hearing of February 24th regarding the Somerville Traffic Commission November 18, 2021 actions, making regulatory changes as indicated on agenda items 5A through D and 6 for one-year parking regulation changes for city and school staff on Central Hill near City Hall, Somerville High School, and the Central Library. Kate, could you read the virtual meeting notice, please?
Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Traffic Board will be conducted via remote participation. An audio recording, audio-video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings will be posted as soon as possible after the meeting on the City of Somerville website. We will begin with a roll call. The Chair of the Traffic Board.
Ira Shore here.
The Mayor's representative to the Traffic Board.
Alex Epstein here.
The City Council's representative to the Traffic Board.
Joan Leo here.
With all three members present, we have quorum.
Thank you. The first and only agenda item is to open the meeting to the public hearing. If the Traffic Board receives a petition relative to a rule or regulation approved by the Traffic Commission, the Traffic Board will hold a public hearing within 2 weeks of receiving the petition and determine by majority vote whether to avoid or affirm the adoption, alteration, or repeal of the rule or regulation. The Traffic Board received an appeal describing the following. We, the undersigned registered voters of the City of Somerville, hereby petition the Somerville Traffic Board to conduct a public hearing regarding the Somerville Traffic Commission November 18, 2021 actions, making parking regulation changes to Highland Avenue to create designated parking for Somerville High School, City Hall staff, and metered parking in front of the Central Library. This was agenda items 5A through D and item 6. There was 1, inadequate notice of the meeting to people most affected. 2, previous proposals to address elimination of parking due to high school construction as early as 8/2019 did not include designated teacher staff parking in residential spots as a solution. 3, only 2 residents were part of the working group responding to the pilot proposal, despite hundreds of people being affected. 4, the 7 a.m. start time of designated teacher staff parking spots is incompatible with morning turnover. Residents have not left when teachers arrive. 5, there was insufficient time to let the alternative parking proposals suggested to the public in August 2019 play out, such as blue bikes, public transit, satellite parking lots. We believe neighborhood residents who vote, pay taxes, patronize businesses, and call Highland Avenue and surrounding streets their home will be harmed by severely limited parking. The city is creating even more inequality by restricting parking and making it harder for people to go to work. Somerville's general welfare will be harmed by the Commission's actions. Pursuant to this is up on the screen as well, and we will repeat it a few times in the meeting so people know why they're here. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, public hearings will be conducted virtually. Here are the rules and regulations to be used during a virtual public hearing. All attendees will be muted at the beginning of the public hearing. Only one person will be allowed to speak at any given time. The chair will take speakers off mute individually when they are called on. Members of the public may request to provide testimony by raising their hand using the raise hand function in the video conferencing platform. The chair and/or city staff will share instructions on how to use the raise hand function at the beginning of the hearing and throughout the meeting. The chair will then call on members of the public in the order that they appear. Members of the public, when speaking, are requested to state for the record their name, address, and the name of any organization they represent, if applicable. Members of the public are requested to speak directly and clearly due to the fact that these proceedings are being recorded. Statements from the public are limited to 2 minutes each. The chair reserves the right to interrupt comments that extend beyond 2 minutes in order to afford everyone an opportunity to provide testimony. Project proponents will be asked to provide a presentation with background information to inform the Traffic Board and members of the public. After all speakers in the queue have completed their testimony, the chair will ask whether there are any members of the public who have not yet provided testimony who wish to. Written testimony can be sent by email to transportation@somervillema.gov or by mail to Mobility Division, Attention Hearing, 93 Highland Avenue, Somerville, Massachusetts, 02143. Written testimony must be received by 4 p.m. of the day of the public hearing. All public and written comments received will be included in the board's consideration. And finally, the board will determine by majority vote whether to avoid or affirm the adoption, alteration, or repeal of the rule or regulation. We will first begin with a brief presentation from the project proponents, in this case, the City of Somerville. After the presentation, we will open it up to public testimony.
Good evening, Chair, and through you, good evening to the board members, to our residents and staff in attendance. My name is Brad Rawson, and I serve the city as Director of Mobility in the Mayor's Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development. The city serves as proponent of this project, and our staff will provide a short introduction to the project before you tonight. Kate, please advance our slide. For background, Chair, the construction of the Somerville High School project and the related open space and playground facilities, the majority of historic on-site surface parking facilities for the Central Hill campus has been eliminated. To manage this process and communicate with stakeholders, the city convened a working group and held a series of public meetings over the years to gather input and to share information about managing mobility and managing parking resources and addressing challenges as they emerged. Next slide, please. To inform this work, the city commissioned a series of parking studies focused on the broad neighborhood around the Central Hill campus of City Hall, Somerville High School, and the Central Library. The first study was performed in 2017. The second study was performed in 2018. And the 2018 study had the benefit of capturing changes associated with the first phase of Somerville High School construction. Both studies concluded that on-street parking resources in the neighborhood were sufficient to meet demand from parking uses displaced from surface parking lots on the Central Hill campus. These studies also recommended a series of policy approaches to better manage demand for the driving and parking public. These included a variety of policy measures not limited to zonal parking for municipal workforce and a series of incentives and benefits programs to stimulate more switching of driving modes to walking, transit, and bicycle modes of travel. Next slide, please. Simultaneously, the city of Somerville worked on efforts to increase parking capacity in the surrounding neighborhoods. Through our procurement office, the city commissioned formal requests for proposals from private property owners who might be interested in leasing surface parking lots for the city to utilize for municipal workforce or other neighborhood needs. In 2019, we had an unsuccessful proposal process where we were not able to get any viable private partners responding to our procurement. The city also worked to increase off-street parking facilities on sites that the city controls. For example, at the corner of Medford Street and School Street, a city-owned property has served as construction access and laydown facilities for the MBTA Green Line project. As part of that space, we have provided an off-street lot that is capable of handling 16 or so parking spaces, and that facility has been available for the last couple of years. The lot was well used during some phases of construction, although during the Green Line bridge closure of Medford Street, our observations suggest that it has been less well utilized. The city also created off-site satellite lots in other neighborhoods away from Central Hill. We used city-owned facilities in East Somerville and Winter Hill to test out whether or not municipal workforce would use these satellite lots and then achieve a last mile connection to workplaces on the hill using mass transit, walking or biking or ride sharing. Staff utilization of these resources was deemed to be quite low, and the pilot was considered to be unsuccessful. Next slide, please. Lastly, the city has been engaged in a series of efforts to reduce parking demand on the hill as well as in the surrounding neighborhoods. The first was to establish a new zonal parking program for workforce at City Hall, Central Library, and Somerville High School. Individual workers would be assigned to one of the neighborhood sub-districts to reduce pressure on any given neighborhood street in the area and spread out that demand. Secondly, the city was successful in working with our partners at the MBTA to increase bus frequency along Highland Avenue, most specifically with the Route 90 service between East Somerville and Davis Square. Our advocacy resulted in approximately a 30% increase in the number of daily trips on Route 90. Along the lines of mass transit solutions, the city has more recently invested in a free student transit pass program, providing unrestricted bus, subway, and almost unrestricted commuter rail pass privileges for approximately 1,400 students at Somerville High School, Full Circle, and Next Wave programs. Lastly, the city has invested in the public-owned bike share program known as Blue Bikes. We have expanded the choices, the stations, and the fleet of city-owned Blue Bikes on and around the campus. And similarly, we have invested in a program to put free memberships in the municipal workforce's pockets, and we've seen great uptick in the number of city and school staff using the Blue Bikes program because of this subsidy program. We're working to make these, to continue these subsidy programs and make them permanent if possible. As we look forward, Chair, the city is committed to continuing to work to manage these resources and to communicate and balance the needs of all of our diverse stakeholders. We look forward to the MBTA's Green Line project completing its bridge reconstruction and its associated utility work on School Street and Medford Street bridges. Each one of those bridges will create more curbside parking choices in the neighborhood and relieve pressure on any hotspots around the campus. We were all eager to hear great news today about the opening date for the Union Square branch of the Green Line extension at the end of March 2022. And we look forward to a summertime opening for the main branch to Tufts University with the Somerville High School Gilman Square stop coming online ideally in midsummer. And we're actively working to try to make sure that we can continue our transit pass programs for students, workforce, visitors, and residents. We're really excited about the community path extension, knowing that many of our residents, workers, students, and visitors are going to have a safe and predictable way to walk or to bike from Davis Square and points west with the Minuteman Bikeway Network, all the way over to East Somerville, to East Cambridge, and the Charles River Path Network and North Station. Community path extension is going to be an important part of mobility solutions for Central Hill. It will also be brought into service this summer. Lastly, Chair, the city will work to continue and expand its off-street parking provision at the corner of School Street and Medford Street on the city-owned Holman's Building site. The temporary surface lot may be increased in size as Green Line construction wraps up. And in the longer-term community process that we are working with local neighbors around, we anticipate there may be opportunities for public garage parking to be provided as part of that integrated redevelopment planning that is going through a community process right now. So with that, Chair, that concludes my opening background information. I'd like to introduce Justin Schreiber from city staff, who will take the next part of our background presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. Good evening, board members. I just have a brief summary of the proposal before you. Agenda item number 5 is about creating that Central Hill campus parking zone. These are the parking spaces that would require City Hall or school permits from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on weekdays. All permits would be granted after 9 a.m. It would apply to about 52 spaces surrounding the campus, and I'll bring up a map in a moment, but on Highland, Walnut, School Street, and Bedford Street. 43 of those were previously 2-hour or resident permit only during the day, resident permit parking only overnight. The remainder were spaces on School Street that were previously City Hall permit only that would be expanded to include school permits as well. So the proposal does not provide for all campus staff parking. It doesn't add capacity, but it's intended to provide some predictability on the locations of where staff parking can be found. With this proposal, we're also trying to reduce the pressure on a small number of really heavily used side streets. And lastly, we proposed it for a period of 1 year to allow us to collect some data on how it's being used and evaluate its impact. Agenda item 6 was the parking meters in front of the central library. Proposal was for 8 parking meters active from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and then permit parking only from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And those spaces were previously the 2-hour accept by permit during most of the day, and then in the very late overnight to early morning were permit parking only. This is just a visual of those 2 agenda items. So in red, you could see the City Hall school permit only parking areas along Highland, Walnut, and School. And then the ones along School Street, right up against City Hall there, those are the ones that were previously the City Hall permit parking only. And the image of the high school is a bit outdated. This is from before the construction, so the driveways aren't exactly in the same place, but this is where those spots are approximately located, and then also the approximate location of the parking meters as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne Renford, the parking director, to talk about the traffic commission procedures for a moment. Oh, Suzanne, sorry, you're muted.
Good evening. I'm Suzanne Renford, the Director of Parking. And I'm just going to go over the Traffic Commission November 18th meeting posting. So the meeting notice was posted to the city calendar by the Parking Department on November 11th. The meeting agenda was posted by the Parking Department on November 15th. Typically, we do send out the calendar notice a week in advance. We did it a little bit early this time because of November 11th was actually a holiday. So we did it we sent it to them a little bit earlier because the meeting was on the 18th. Pre-registration was not required for the meeting. Attendees can join by web or telephone. They were both available. The meeting was recorded and posted on the city website. And following the commissioner and public comment, Traffic Commission voted to approve the proposal at the 11/18 meeting. The regulations were advertised for 3 weeks as required before taking effect. They were in the Somerville News Times, and they were on 12/14, 12/21, and 12/28 in the Somerville News Weekly. Implementation began the last week of January, but was not completed due to weather. And then we stopped once we received the petition. We didn't go any further with the implementation. So the meters are not in, just the regulation for the 7 to 9. Thank you.
And board members, that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up if any of the members of the traffic board have questions about the presentation.
Yeah, I wanted a clarifying question here. Is any of this in effect, or is it that item 6 is not in effect, but item 5A through D has been in effect?
So portions of 5 are in effect. Essentially, the work that was done was just the hanging signs on existing poles. We couldn't create new signposts. So most of the spaces along Highland Ave are in effect, but not, and one side of Walnut Street on that block, but not to the other side of Walnut Street and over on School Street as well. So I think the answer is 5 is partially, but mostly along the main stretch on Highland Ave. And then 6 is not. So that's still in the previous condition because that requires new meter poles to be put in.
I have a follow-up on that. This is a 1-year pilot, and if I understand, you're collecting data and we'll do an assessment at the end of the pilot. So are you considering the pilot having started for that purpose? Is the process of collecting data and assessment, is that underway?
I don't consider the pilot having started for that purpose because we were in the middle of planning a communications push out to the staff to make them aware of the spaces. And many staff may be aware, but that hasn't taken place yet.
Okay, so, okay, thanks.
And then just with also implementing the parking meters would potentially change things a little bit. So no, not for that purpose.
I guess what are you looking for? What are you measuring as part of this pilot? how would you know at the end of this year, at the end of this pilot, if something has been fixed, if something has been addressed, whether or not to continue it?
I think, in my opinion, the main goal would be to make sure that the spaces are being used and that we're dedicating sort of the minimum needed. And we wouldn't want the spaces to go unused and then not be available for other uses during that time.
So Director Austin listed a number of other measures that have been planned to be in effect. I'm assuming that obviously we don't have the green line ready yet. Some of those are in place. Is that full scope of options still intended to be implemented?
Yes, Chair. Most of those measures are in place. Several of them are expected to be initiated in the near future. And to the previous question, all of them will be evaluated with data collected and published as part of our evaluation of the ongoing needs in and around Central Hill.
Why, so with some of these like satellite parking lots and the other pilots that you've tried, has there been kind of a retrospective of why those haven't been as successful? Why like the satellite parking lots had low utilization?
So the Foss Park area was about a 15-minute walk to the hill, and the one in Cobble Hill, I think, was a little bit longer, about 18 minutes, but it had the 88 and the 90 bus within a couple-minute walk. And I think one of the main reasons is that folks that live in Somerville that have resident permits, or folks that have the school permit, they're permitted to park in the resident permit parking areas. So in my mind, there's not much of an incentive for them to park in those areas. And I think even if they arrived and could not find a space in the immediate area, my understanding is they have to be reported at a certain time. So then to go to a satellite area and walk back, it just wouldn't work for schedules. So I think they just ended up being a little too far away and not being able to compete with just the standard, neighborhood parking.
Would it make sense to open up those satellite parking lots to the residents that are affected?
The Foss Park one is and was. It actually is a permanent parking only area where we were just going to make sure that school folks knew that they can also park there. In Cobble Hill, it was only 10 spaces, and it was dedicated just for the city hall and school permits. I think it's a little bit too far away from the folks directly on the hill to make use of it. But after that was only during the day, so it could be used by other people in the evening and overnight. On that street in general, the parking utilization is pretty low, so I don't think it is necessarily needed extra capacity in that location.
I heard mention that some high school students may be driving to school. This is not something I was aware of. Do you have information on how the student population, the staff of the school, currently get to work or to class? And I guess I addressed this to either Justin or to Director Rawson.
Thank you for the question through the chair. We do not have good travel behavior data about the student body, and I think that is part of a future evaluation that we can work with our partners at the Somerville Public Schools to conduct to understand levels of driving behavior, percentage of trip sharing and car sharing, ride sharing versus single occupancy trips. But again, to link to a previous question, it is important for board members to note that Somerville residents, including students, have unrestricted citywide curb parking privileges. We do not use zonal parking for our residents, and as a result, any student or any Somerville resident from any part of the city can park on any street, including streets around the Central Hill neighborhood.
It was also mentioned that no outreach has occurred about the pilot to city staff or school staff at this time? So there's not expected to be any awareness of the availability of the currently signed spaces. Did I hear that correctly and understand that correctly?
I think I just don't think there's full awareness.
Or,
You know,
right.
there were members of school staff and city staff that were aware, and I think that word has definitely traveled. There are people utilizing it. But it wasn't sort of formally announced with details and a map and that sort of thing.
In one of the comments, somebody sent a picture of low utilization because it's, I guess, winter holiday. Like, are residents allowed to utilize those parking spots if they're aware of like school holidays or things like that?
Yeah, I think this is something we've been thinking about too. And really the intent was for it to be in effect. It's open to school and city staff, but the timing is really targeted for when school staff have to arrive at the high school. So the intent is to have it on school days, and our understanding from the parking department is those are the only days it's being enforced. So, you know, something that we can do is making that a little more clear to the neighborhood, and also, you know, possibly on the signs itself, that the intent is really for the regulation to be in effect only when the high school is open, when school is in session.
How did you use the two parking studies that were done in 2018 and 2019? Were those used in putting this pilot together? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Those studies were used to take a look at the neighborhood overnight parking and determine essentially, you know, are there enough spaces to accommodate the loss of spaces in the campus? So the consultants went block by block counting spaces in the overnight peak period, and then they were, you know, literally reassigning spaces to streets to see if they can distribute the demand throughout the neighborhood. It talked about trying to create more parking supply, but it didn't specifically suggest making these dedicated spaces. I think one of the things we realized in the time that took place after the studies is that, you know, there is capacity, but it's sort of sprinkled throughout the neighborhood. And this was a way of trying to concentrate at least some of that capacity in some locations that it could be found, instead of being sort of widespread. And then, you know, related to that, just the fact that really a small number, there were complaints, especially from a small number of streets that were really taking the brunt of cars, you know, circling in the morning and really being, you know, really concentrating on a certain number of small streets rather than sort of spreading out in the neighborhood like was intended.
And just to remind me, I'm sorry if I missed it in the presentation, how many surface spaces were removed during or have been removed in the redesign?
Chair, before the
Sorry, go ahead.
construction process started, there were approximately 250 surface parking spaces sprinkled through several different lots, for stretching from the central library on the Walnut Street side of the campus to the back lot near the corner of school and Madison Montrose. After construction is completed, the final design includes approximately 85 surface parking spaces that will remain on the hill. So as we noted, the majority of spaces have been converted to other uses, primarily green and open space.
So that means the studies were looking at if the balance of those 175, 65 spaces could be accommodated in surrounding streets. Is that what I understand?
Yes, thank you.
And this is 43 spaces that have been allocated?
It's 52 in total, but 43 sort of new, because there's the spaces along the school street side of City Hall that were previously just city employees.
So about a quarter of the spaces that were assessed in the studies.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there a reason for it all being along the school and not some of the streets like that are closer that might have more driveway space? I know that was kind of a concern from some of the residents.
Yeah, I think the intent was to try and take some of the pressure off the small number of side streets. And and not to locate these reserved spaces directly in front of homes surrounding the campus. So the idea was to really keep it along, along the campus itself. And again, I will note that staff, the balance of staff definitely are using those other streets in the neighborhoods, completely surrounding the campus.
I also would like some clarification on item 5D. It says a request for approximately 9 parking spaces on the east side of Walnut Street between Highland Ave and Medford Street, currently regulated at no parking anytime. The petition seems to count this as part of their 50 spots or so that's removed. I guess I'm trying to figure out why they're considering this as part of spots that are removed from them when it's clearly changing from no parking to parking dedicated towards staff.
Yeah, those spaces were removed during the closure of the Medford Street Bridge and the School Street Bridge when they were simultaneously closed. So they were previously resident permit parking spaces that were removed for the past couple of years. So I think they were originally part of the parking capacity, and there was a temporary restriction that was in place.
And any particular decision reasoning why the time frame is 7 to 9 a.m. versus like 7:30 or just like an hour or anything like that?
Yeah, so I believe the high school start time is 7:15. So 7 a.m. was really sort of the latest that it could begin. And then just allowing time for enforcement to take place, and City Hall start time being at 8:30. That's why the 2-hour period was established.
I have a question for Director Renfret. I think on your slide you noticed, and I quickly reviewed the minutes, if I see correctly, there was public comment in the November Traffic Commission meeting. Did I read that correctly?
It was, I'd have to look at the transcript exactly. That is recorded transcript. I can't remember exactly what the public comment was.
Okay, but it was on your slide, so there were public attendees who commented on this.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, I guess this is timely as well. Tomorrow, we're currently under a snow emergency warning, or snow emergency starting in an hour. What happens on Highland Street for the parking there?
Director Renfret, correct me if I'm wrong, it is a park odd year, so parking is not permitted on the City Hall side during a snow emergency.
Parking is not allowed on the odd side of the street during a snow emergency. That's correct.
And if it had been an even year, would this essentially mean that people would have to park their cars in the staff parking side and then dig out their cars before 7 a.m.?
No. If it was during a snow emergency, their vehicles could stay there because school would be canceled. And it was during a snow emergency, it's parking on that side of the street.
Okay, so it sounds like there's definitely some clarification needed that when school's not in session, they are allowed to leave their cars and park there and ignore the 7 to 9 a.m.
I was going to ask also a clarification about the existing challenge with teachers arriving on time. I'm wondering if there's some documented or known rate at which teachers are arriving late, or are not arriving on time at 7:15 or whenever their shift begins. What is the level of awareness of how much this is occurring?
Yeah, I can at least really speak to what I've heard through the working group. So this isn't sort of data. This is just sharing folks that have shared stories, and that does happen, and that was a concern that folks would be late and need to call the main office to let them know because they couldn't find a space.
What happens when they have to call the main office? How does that unfold?
Our understanding is that an educator would be asking for coverage at the bell time. If that person was unable to get to a specific classroom by the bell time, that there would be a coverage strategy that the central office would attempt to manage to ensure appropriate coverage of that educator's classroom.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a procedural question about this traffic board. Given, I think we hear petitions only within 30 days of it being, the decision being made, or more than 30 days after implementation. Why this petition is being put in about item 6, since it's not implemented yet, and it's more than 30 days after the decision was made.
I think that's a question to ourselves, unless somebody from the city staff has something they want to add.
Chair, the regulations that you all operate under are defined in the city charter and code of ordinances. And as members know, there is some degree of specificity about regulations that have been implemented versus regulations that have not yet been implemented. To respect the folks who have taken the time to prepare signatures and to submit a petition, our staff's recommendation was to co-locate and just bring all of this together to you all, rather than split hairs and ask for one petition about regulations that are in place and a separate one about petitions about regulations that had not yet been implemented. This is a new process for you, and this is a new process for our staff and for our residents. And we're trying to make sure that it's as transparent, predictable, and user-friendly as possible. We'd certainly welcome your feedback as well as our residents and stakeholders as we strive to improve these processes.
Are there any other questions from the board before we take public comment?
I'm wondering if adjustments such as indeed replacing the regulatory signs to read school days instead of weekdays, or such other clarifications are potentially an outcome here. It sounded like from what you said, Justin, earlier, that may be in scope, in scope for the pilot to if it were to proceed.
Yes, that's correct.
It's my understanding that, for example, in front of the Kennedy and perhaps other schools, there are signs like that, no parking. I'm not sure exactly if it's 7 to 9 a.m., but school loading hours, and it specifically does, I believe, say school days for those signs.
Yes, part of the challenge is it's 3 signs on top of each other. It's a lot of text, but we can definitely work with the parking department to brainstorm how best to make that clear.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Is there going to be a check-in point at this pilot, like before the 1-year period, to kind of maybe look at reallocating some of those dedicated spots, or are we pretty committed to these locations specifically?
Through the chair, our staff are open to not only convening our working group and larger community meeting opportunities, but to modifying regulations and even modifying the pilot based on what we learn. We can mobilize resources to evaluate the effectiveness and the challenges if this pilot proceeds. And we'll certainly look forward to working with all neighborhood stakeholders on any tweaks or larger changes as conditions change. We did acknowledge some of the changing construction conditions down at the Green Line site, for example, and our staff are looking forward to evaluating parking demand and utilization as some of those facilities come back online.
So we're thinking March, April is a reevaluation point, or?
The Chair, my expectation would be springtime would be as specific as we could provide for you all at this moment.
Okay. I don't think I have any more questions.
I would just ask one more related to Joan's question, and Director Rawson, you specifically mentioned the Green Line extension opening and the Community Path extension opening, these new facilities coming online. Those will happen before the one-year pilot is complete. Can you speak to whether those may be times when the pilot is sort of the performance of the pilot is considered and measured? How is that changing the behavior of the staff before having to wait till a year to adjust and possibly amend regulations to make this work better?
Through the chair, I would echo my response from the previous question, that if the springtime allows for some monitoring and potential modification based on new information and new bridge parking facilities coming back online, clearly the Green Line main line and the Community Path opening in the summertime would allow us to do evaluation in the fall of 2022 with new information and new dynamics. And again, our team, our interdepartmental team as the city, we are committed to modifying based on new information, based on user feedback and the quantitative data that we could collect in the neighborhood. So I think it's a long-winded way of saying yes. Thank you for the question. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to clarify my point there. I think there is value in maybe evaluating whether all those spaces need to be on Highland or specifically surrounding them. If we could put those zoned clear parking spots at places that don't require circling, like say at the end of a street before they need to turn on, where it's clear that there's no parking spots there, on streets where there are driveways that people can be using. I know driveway utilization is kind of low in my neighborhood, and I imagine in a lot of other places too, given that Highland doesn't have as much of the driveways. That seems like a potential possibility to evaluate sooner than the one-year pilot.
Actually, that does make me ask, going back to those parking studies, were those only focused on on-street parking, or were those also off-street vehicle storage within the study area in 2017, 2019?
On-street parking only.
Did not consider utilization of off-street? And whether
No,
okay.
Sorry, the early study included the off-street lots on the high school campus to get an idea for how many they needed to reallocate, but they weren't looking at off-street parking, in the neighborhood.
Let me ask a follow-up, maybe a clarification to Alex's question. Were those studies considering utilization of private driveways, utilization rate of private driveways, when you looked at the overall parking needs in the surrounding streets?
No, they were not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking, Eric.
Okay, are there any other questions? All right. So before we move to public comment, I'm going to read the appeal text again so that people know what they're commenting on. So the appeal that we received read, "We, the undersigned registered voters of the city of Somerville, hereby petition the Somerville Traffic Board to conduct a public hearing regarding the Somerville Traffic Commission November 18th, 2021 actions, making parking regulation changes to Highland Avenue to create designated parking for Somerville High School, City Hall staff, and metered parking in front of the Central Library. Agenda items 5A through D, item 6. There was 1, inadequate notice of the meeting to most people affected. 2, previous proposals to address elimination of parking due to high school construction as early as 8/2019 did not include designated teacher/staff parking in residential spots as a solution. 3, only 2 residents were part of a working group responding to the pilot proposal despite hundreds of people being affected. 4, the 7 a.m. start time of designated teacher/staff parking spots is incompatible with morning turnover. Residents have not left when teachers arrive. 5, there was insufficient time to let the alternative parking proposals suggested to the public in August 2019 play out, such as blue bikes, public transit, satellite parking lots. We believe neighborhood residents who vote, pay taxes, patronize businesses, and call Highland Avenue and surrounding streets their home will be harmed by severely limited parking. The city is creating even more inequality by restricting parking and making it harder for people to go to work. Somerville's general welfare will be harmed by the commission's actions. So we will now open it up to public testimony. Kate will share the instructions to raise your hand in this Zoom video conferencing platform. Kate?
Thank you, Chair. To participate, please select the raise hand function. You can find this by either clicking on the reactions button in your toolbar, which you can find either at the bottom or the top of your screen. And a window will pop up, say raise hand. In some Zoom versions, you can find this directly on your toolbar or through your participants window. We will call on you when it is your turn and unmute your microphone. We will also share the queue of raised hands so that everyone in the Zoom session has an idea of who is up next. If you are joining us by phone this evening, you can press *9 to raise your hand. If you have any technical difficulties at any time, please reach out to me, Kate White, by email at kwhite@somervillema.gov or by phone at 617-366-7293. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and bring up the 2-minute counter.
Thank you, Kate. And I just wanted to reiterate that prior to the public hearing, the board received written testimony from 32 people. The board has reviewed these comments and we will include them in our consideration. And as a reminder, again, for public testimony, you may request to provide testimony by raising your hand using the raise hand function of the video conferencing platform. I see a number of people are doing that. The chair, I will then call on members of the public in the order that they appear. Staff liaison Kate will share the number of speakers in line and also the queue of upcoming speakers. If you have technical difficulties, please reach out to Kate at kwhite@somervillema.gov or 617-366-7293 or through the chat box. When members of the public, when speaking, are requested to state for the record your name, address, and the name of any organization you represent, if applicable. Members of the public are requested to speak directly and clearly due to the fact that these proceedings are being recorded. Statements from the public are limited to 2 minutes each. The chair reserves the right to interrupt comments that extend beyond 2 minutes in order to afford everyone an opportunity to provide testimony. Okay, Kate, are you ready? Do you have the timer?
Yes, just bear with me one moment. I'll bring it up. There you go.
So
Can you see it
please-
on your screen?
We can, yes.
Okay. So currently we have 14 people with hands raised. We first have Danielle Angelo, followed by Brett Celery, then Don Davis.
Okay, Danielle, you should be unmuted if you'd like to provide comment.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So my name is Danielle Angelo. I'm a homeowner and resident of 17 Pleasant Ave. I just wanted to kind of, reach out. I had emailed Ben, my councilman, in the past. So I've had issues where during peak construction and school being back simultaneously, I've been blocked in my own driveway by a teacher, so much that I couldn't use my driveway. I called the police to see if there's anything they could do. I chose not to have the teacher's car towed, knowing that I didn't need to get out of the driveway, and I had another mode of transportation available to me. However, I don't blame the teachers and I don't blame the students. There's just not anywhere for them to park. But I've also had issues with street sweeping where the front of our house from, April till I think last June, it was not swept at all because there were people parked there. Traffic and parking would walk down the street. I even spoke to a traffic and parking officer. He said, we can't really issue tickets. There's teachers, there's nowhere for them to park. So what are we paying taxes for? The front of my house was filthy, stuff like that. I do have a few questions about things that were discussed today, the signage, about parking from, 7 to 9 or whatever it is, when school is in session. How does that work for summer programs and camps? How would a resident truly know when school is in session or the building is being utilized? I have a fear that with that sign being up, I think that it could be misconstrued. People could take, creative liberty and say, well, technically school is in session this summer camp, summer school or basketball camp or something like that. Another thing I kind of want to understand, and I can probably email offline, but how many high school and city staff spots were originally eliminated pre-high school construction? How was this gap missed, right? Like how many spots were taken away from the teachers and the city hall staff and
Thank you,
now
Danielle.
kind of forced?
Thank
So,
you for your comment.
thank
Okay.
you.
Kate, who is next?
So we have 18 people with their hands raised. We next have Brett Solari, then Don Davis, then Daria Diamond.
Okay, Brett Solari, you should be unmuted.
Hey there, Brett Celery, 205 Highland Ave. I am opposed to parking being removed on Highland Ave. I feel like the teachers deserve an off-street parking site in front of the high school or at a parking garage. I feel that they travel such far distances that they should be able to park their cars safely off city streets and reserve city street parking for residents. Thank you very much and have a great.
Thank you, Brett. Kate, who's next?
Next, we have Don Davis, followed by Daria Diamond, then Counselor Ben Ewan-Campen.
Okay, Don Davis, you should be off mute.
My name is Don Davis. I live at 148 School Street, corner of Madison, across from the west end of the Somerville High, west end entrance of Somerville High, across from the parking lot that's been eliminated. We're not in our neighborhood only complaining about the new staff parking spots that are designated. We're worried that more and more staff, both city and Somerville High, will be parking on our side street, Madison Street and Montrose Street, which was our problem before all this. You forced these teachers who were able to park at the west end to out into our neighborhood, and they're not only going to park in these designated spots that you've given, but even when school is out, we don't have enough parking here. I sometimes have to refuse to drive my kids because I don't dare give up my parking spot. I own my house, but I don't have off-street parking. And so it's all the worse during the daytime if I need to go grocery shopping during my lunch hour. Well, I don't dare to do so because I won't have a place to park and I won't be able to start work myself. You guys are so concerned about City Hall staff and Somerville teacher staff being able to get to work on time. You have no concern for us residents, zero. Your answer is that we should be bicycling. I'm 66 years old, I have a heart condition. I can't bicycle up and down these side streets. I mean, this is insane. Please restore the high school lot. We don't need an athletic field there. We need a high school parking lot or garage near the school for the benefit of the teachers and of the residents so that we're not further oppressed by the city. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Don Davis. Kate, who's next?
We have 17 hands raised. Next, we have Daria Diamond, followed by Counselor Ben Ewan-Campen, and then Atlas Larson.
Thank you. Daria Diamond, you should be unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi, I'm Daria Diamond. I live at 42 Highland Avenue. I have lived through the whole high school construction fiasco for 3 years. And I've seen the parking spots disappear, and it's been, very difficult for me to park. I have 2 very small children. This parking construction started when my kids were 1 and 3, and it was very difficult, but I've managed through it. I don't mind walking. We love to walk. My husband's a bike commuter, but we still need a car to be able to get around. And the parking solutions that the city gave back in August of 2019 did not include designated spots for teachers and staff. And then I hear through Ben Ewan Campus newsletter in November of 2021 that the Parking Commission is voting on designating 50 resident parking spots. I was really shocked to hear that, because prior to that, there were all kinds of hearings and, you know, residents were giving input. So it just felt not very transparent. And something like this in an area where there's limited parking should have received more public input. We only had two residents on the working group that actually suggested the 7 to 9 designated parking. And even that time, I mean, that 7 to 9 is not very compatible with morning turnover. Residents can't park there after work unless they plan to leave by 7 a.m. the next day, which is not practical for many families. So if I park there in the morning, if I park there in the evening, I have to run out there and move my car by 7 a.m. So in practice, these will be weekend only spots. And quickly, I would just like to address a few things that were brought up. School actually starts at 7:55, and this winter, you're supposed to park on the odd numbered side of the street, which basically makes the new designated spots unusable for us residents during the snowstorm, unless I want to get towed tomorrow at 7 a.m.
Thank you, Daria Diamond. Thank you for your comments. Kate?
We have 17 hands raised. Next, we have Counselor Ewan Campen, followed by Alice Larson, and then Ahmed.
Thank you. Counselor Ewan Campen, you should be able to unmute.
Good evening. Thank you all very much for the opportunity. So many parts of being a city councilor are very rewarding. This is not a particularly enjoyable part, because I'm going to speak in support of the teacher and staff spots on Highland. I think that this is a necessary designation. But it's also very clear, as you're hearing tonight, and as I've heard over the last year, that there are many of the constituents that I represent, and particularly people who live on Highland, are strongly opposed to this, and I completely understand where they're coming from. A lot of these residents don't have off-street parking, have been dealing with increasingly tight parking challenges that are really acute around the high school. And I'll just say that myself, and I know many of my colleagues on the city council, really strongly believe that it was a big mistake to not build a parking structure for teachers. As kind of idealistic as that might have been, I think that that was a mistake. But that said, there is no parking structure. And the simple fact is that it is the responsibility of all of us in mobility staff, on the city council, in the mayor's office, in traffic and parking, to deal with the reality that is before us. And that it is a tough reality. But that is the one that we're dealing with. And the simple fact is that I really believe that by providing some predictability about where teachers and staff can park, that is going to remove some of the, I don't want to exaggerate it, but the chaos that has been on the neighborhood streets with kind of in the morning when residents are leaving for morning errands and then coming back, and the neighborhood is completely, overrun by people frantically looking for parking. It's been really chaotic and really difficult. And adding some predictability to that, I think, is going to be a major benefit. And in addition, I think it's really important to emphasize, as we heard tonight, that this is part of a larger strategy. This was not a quickly thought up, done overnight without planning. This is kind of as a result of the difficulties we saw with offsite lots, and as part of a set of policies around blue bikes, public transit, to minimize as much as possible the number of people who need to drive to school, while still accommodating the fact that there is a significant portion of teachers who do need to drive. And I think we need to recognize that it would be a major disservice to the students at the high school if we don't do everything that we can to make sure that the school can function. So again, I am in support of this, and I'm thankful for the opportunity. And I thank you for hearing the concerns of all my constituents tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ewan Campen. Kate, who is in the queue?
We have 15 hands raised. Next, we have Alice Larson, followed by Stephanie Galizzi, and then just Denise Waddington.
Okay, Atlas Larson, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you very much for your time. My name is Atlas Larson. I live at 34 Belknap in Somerville, and I'm representing Bostonian Florist. I will be echoing a lot of other residents' concerns. And I just want to say that while providing more parking on streets for staff of Somerville High School and City Hall is great, this also limits parking for surrounding businesses, which have already been hit very hard by multiple waves of COVID. And I want to know how you are going to offset the effects of limiting parking for surrounding businesses and residents. I also want to know at what time of year the parking studies were conducted, mostly just because if they were conducted over the summer, I don't feel that they are extremely accurate. I also want to add in terms of questions, does increasing parking in surrounding areas affect private property owners? And I think I have already heard tonight that it definitely does. And I also want to know what is being done and what is being thought of about for people with disabilities and people who rely heavily on their vehicles to get to work or get to and from their homes, and like how much that is being taken into consideration. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Atlas Larson. Kate, who is in the queue?
Next, we have Stephanie Galetti, followed by Denise Waddington, followed by Anita, and there is a total of 15 people in the queue.
Okay, Stephanie Galetti, you should be able to mute yourself.
Hi, thanks. I support this program. I really think we need to be doing whatever we can for our teachers because our schools are not really anything without our teachers and they've been through so much. And also sort of like what Ben was saying, it doesn't seem like there is an alternative. So the teachers need parking, the residents need parking. Maybe the residents can move into their driveways more. I mean, I'm looking out at my street, which is supposed to be one of the heaviest demand areas in Somerville for parking, and half the cars are gone for the snow emergency. But for the teachers, there isn't an alternative because we haven't managed the demand and we haven't increased supply. So really the only thing that we can control right now is how long they spend every morning looking for parking. They're going to find it somewhere. So it's the quantity isn't going to change. It's just the inconvenience. And that goes for the residents as well, as their streets are overtaken by all of these people cruising for parking. I think that it makes sense to bring order to the system, recognize that this demand exists, it's not going anywhere, and give them a place to park that they know is going to be there in the morning. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie Galetti. I want to remind public commenters, please state your name, address, and any affiliation if you have one for these comments. Kate, would you let us know who's in the queue?
Yes, we have 15 members of the public in the queue. Next, we have Denise Waddington, followed by Anita, followed by someone who's identified as time as resident.
Okay, Denise Waddington, you should be able to unmute yourself.
My name is Denise Waddington. I live at 123 Highland Avenue in a large apartment building. There are many of them in the neighborhood. And I just want to say that I think it was a huge mistake not to provide parking during the planning process for Somerville High School for the renovation. It's a disservice to the educators and the students at the school and to residents. This seems like it was poor planning. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. But I'm wondering if there's have you considered any other pieces of real estate, even in the high school itself, that could be cut out for additional parking? And I wonder if, there was a lot of planning done up until 2018, like 4 years ago. Have you factored in the new working from home ethic? There are so many people now who will be permanently working from home, at least on a part-time basis. And it seems to me that that's a factor that can't be ignored in the planning. I'm also wondering about street cleaning. 2 out of 7 days a week, our parking is reduced on Highland Avenue. And we just had a very large apartment building condo built across the street from us, and that's going to add many more cars. And I'm wondering, is there any flexibility even with street cleaning schedules? Can it be done once a week rather than twice a week? I have limited mobility. I can't walk, ride a bike, take public transportation easily. I live by myself, and there's my time.
Thank you, Denise Wantington. Thank you for your comments. Kate, can you let us know who's next?
Yes, we have 14 hands raised at this time. Next, we have Anita, followed by Resident, followed by Jeremy.
Okay, Anita, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anita. I am a resident of Somerville and a business owner in Somerville as well. My business is right on 92 Highland Avenue, Kaya Beauty Spa. We have been in this issue for parking since the high school construction started and then the bridge on School Street. So there's no parking whatsoever before. I appreciate all those teachers, they come to teach our kids. I have a kid in high school, so I appreciate all of them. They do need a parking spot. However, it's not fair to the business owner around that area or the residents around that area. If I talk about like across from us, there's 2 parking spots and it says school van only. So high school already have that huge driveway and the buses goes there. So we don't need that school parking sign right across from us, I would say. If you walk a little bit further down, it says YMCA buses only sign. YMCA have 2 parking lots. They can park their buses, drop the kids and pick up the kids from there. So I think that could be designated parking spots for the residential. We already lost so much business due to the parking issue since the construction started and then the COVID. And I feel like the city officials don't care about small businesses anymore, especially on Highland Avenue, because if this issue is keep going on, I think we soon won't be in business. And since I'm resident and a business owner, I pay taxes to the city. So I feel they should be considering them, as they're at least in their list. We have handicapped or, people who cannot walk to us, drive there. So I would appreciate if you guys think a little bit more about, small businesses. And I would say thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Anita. Kate, can you let us know who's next?
Yes, next we have Resident, followed by Jeremy, followed by John Celery.
Okay, Resident, you should be able to unmute yourself. Please state your name and address and let us know your comment.
Hi, yes, I'm Cynthia Devereaux and I live and own the property at 82 Highland Avenue. And I'm concerned about, basically outside becoming a nonstop parking lot between, 7 and 5 p.m. or whatever it is. I don't think that that's fair to the residents. One thing that nobody has mentioned yet is the fact that, billions of dollars have been spent building the Green Line. Sorry, I joined a little late, so I didn't hear the opening comments. I was looking forward to this area becoming a dynamic area with higher quality businesses and more businesses in the area. Obviously, there needs to be pickup and drop off for restaurants, for stores, more people, moving, not staying there all day, but going in and out of the neighborhood and contributing, paying taxes so that the stores pay more taxes and so on. So I'm obviously concerned about, eliminating parking and not allowing the residents and visitors to the city to be able to use that parking. I think there has been a complete lack of transparency. I think it's only because somebody took the effort to make photocopies that many of us might have found out about that this was even happening. Going back to the Green Line, obviously it's not ideal, but you know, has anybody even thought of, you know, making it free for teachers to park at Alewife and take the Green Line to the high school, or, you know, other parking opportunities on the T. You know, somebody mentioned the YMCA lot. I think they're talking about closing the YMCA, right? There's also a huge building next to the town hall that appears to be unoccupied, that takes up a lot of space that would probably fit a parking garage. I mean, obviously those are long-term solutions, and we're looking for a short-term solution, and the Green Line is about to open, apparently. And I haven't heard anybody mentioning that as a possibility for teachers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Kate?
Yes, we have 12 in the queue with their hands raised. Next, we have Jeremy, followed by John Solari, followed by Sophia Milanopoulos.
Thank you. Jeremy, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. And I just want to say I'm an educator. So I want to appreciate all the kind comments I've heard all night about what we were kind of going through. We clearly did not opt to lose our parking. We used to have parking lots. I used to come to work stress-free, to be honest with you. I would just roll up and do my job. Our jobs have been hard enough after the pandemic. Now we actually have to worry about parking, to the point where people have had their side view mirrors swiped right off their cars. Got a $100 ticket in the middle of snow, can't see curbs. So we feel what you guys are going through as residents. I'm open for a longer term solution here to help us out, but just want to know, a lot of us are just really frustrated going into work, just coming to work 45 minutes early, to be quite honest with you, just so we could try to find a spot, and already having stress on our day. So I'm just hoping there's a longer term solution here. And I'm sorry that we're impacting the residents. This is not what obviously educators want to do. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Jeremy. Kate, can you let us know who's next?
Yes, we have 12 people in the queue. Next, we have John Solari, followed by Sophia Milanopoulos, followed by Lisa Brewster Cook.
Okay, John Solari, you should be able to go off mute.
Hi there. Thank you guys so much for the time. My name is John Solari. I live at 9 Forster Street in Somerville. I also manage 92 Highland Ave and 66 Highland Avenue, which are both across the street from the new high school campus. I just want to touch on a few things. First, I don't believe that enough transparency has happened with any of this stuff, and I think it's a common trend with this with the mobility team. I was one of the petitioners of this, and I was given 3 days notice, 3 business days notice of this meeting. So I think you'd have a lot more people out here up in arms if we had gotten more notice about this meeting. In addition to that, I think overnight parking is impossible for our tenants because they have to be out by 7 a.m. It makes it just terrible. In addition to that, I think the board has done some great questioning of the mobility team here, and it seems that none of this was thought through very clearly. It looks like they didn't put enough signage up. They didn't notify the community enough, and they don't even know what side to park on during a snow emergency. So I think you guys really should send this back. Make sure that they give some thought to this plan and roll it out if they need to do something else and do it differently. I mean, these guys are the same people who are running the studies that enable the city not to build the parking garage. So I really think it needs to be rethought and redone, and I hope you guys do that for all of us residents. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your comment, John. Kate, who's next?
Next, we have Sophia Milanopoulos, followed by Lisa Brewster Cook, followed by Aaron S. Weber.
Okay, Sophia Milanopoulos, you should be able to take yourself off mute.
Hi, my name is Sophia Milanopoulos. I live at 25 Highland Avenue. I'd love to know did anyone take into consideration the senior citizens that live here? We need home health aides, we need prescriptions delivered, we need nurses to come and visit. Where are they supposed to park when they come? Wouldn't it be best I'm sure the teachers and the students would rather have parking instead of all that grass that's in front of the high school. Why can't you make parking there instead of taking it away from all the senior citizens? and all the homeowners that live here on Highland Ave. It's quite difficult to get parking now. What are we supposed to do in the future? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sophia Manlapoulos, for your comment. Kate, who is next?
We have 9 people in the queue. Next, we have Lisa Brewster Cook, followed by Aaron S. Weber, followed by George Schneelock. Schneelock.
Thank you. Lisa Brewster Cook, you should be able to go off mute.
Hi, my name is Lisa Brewster Cook. I actually live at 183 Washington Street in Arlington, but I am a teacher at the high school. I want to respond to a couple of things. Staff didn't use the satellite lots for a number of reasons. The people who need them the most are the ones who arrive last because of childcare drop-offs, distance from school, and various other reasons. And people can't easily access them because of the continued road closures of School Street and Medford Street, among others. And we're under a time crunch in the morning, and many staff members are not familiar with the area. As we all know, it's very difficult to circle the area if you aren't familiar with it. Regardless of any of this, there's an ableist nature to this whole drumbeat of using public transportation or riding bikes. Not everyone can do those things. As for teachers not being able to arrive on time, that is true, but there aren't enough substitutes on a normal day, let alone extra ones for when teachers are late. And they're having the same problem that we're having. We actually have a shortage of substitutes because they can't park and they can't get to the building. When I brought this up, I've been told that we would have to take that up with our own administration. I've been a part of the working group, the parking working group, since it started 4 years ago. I've been bringing this up every single time since then, and the residents have as well. The recommendations that you're hearing now are not the recommendations that the residents on the committee or the school staff members put forth in these meetings. It's fully able-bodied people making it more difficult for less or other abled people to live, work, and run a business in Somerville. Thank you to the residents for your patience, and thank you to all of you for having this meeting.
Thank you, Lisa Brewster Cook, for your comment. Kate, who is next?
Next, we have Aaron S. Weber, followed by George Schneelock, followed by Tom Lamar.
Okay, Aaron Weber, you should be able to go off mute.
Aaron Weber just lowered their hand.
Okay.
Would you like to move to the next person?
Sure. George Schneelock, you should be able to go off mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
I'm George Schneelock. I live at 81 School Street, Apartment 1, a 5-minute walk from City Hall and the high school. First, I want to say one thing, that I am happy that the city made the decision not to build that garage. It would have cost $50 million or more, which is a whole lot of money, and it needs to be spent wisely, not on a single parking garage. That money should be an investment for the future of the city's residents. I live a 5-minute walk from City Hall, and I strongly support the pilot. It is good that the city is prioritizing parking for teachers since they mostly need to drive. They are paid poorly by the city, and they may live farther away. Teachers and students now have access to T-passes, which should help reduce free T-passes, which should help reduce the demand for parking. I take the bus every day, and many other residents in my neighborhood can and should do the same. They will soon have a brand new Green Line station to be completed in May. With the sky-high price of cars and gas, it is a uniquely good opportunity for residents to think about shifting to taking the T or the bus. We need to make decisions that benefit our kids, not just ourselves. Please vote yes for this pilot. Thank you.
Thank you, George Schneelock, for your comment. Kate, who is next in our queue?
We currently have 7 hands raised. Next, we have Susan C. Ayers, followed by Jack Connolly, followed by Vicky Cochran.
Okay, Susan Ayers, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Susan Ayers. I live at 30 Summit Avenue. I've been here for more than 30 years. That's just down from the high school and the library. All of these streets that run between Vinyl and Walnut are completely impacted every day, every school day, by people coming and parking in the neighborhood. It makes parking for us very difficult. I feel like, what's the real long-term strategy here? what's happened in the last few years is every time another house turns over, it turns into 3 more units. There's no parking available for the new construction folks. The issue that came up earlier about people working at home is a huge issue. People are not moving their cars during the day. The third thing is with the green line coming in, people will be looking for parking. I worry about how are we going to hear from the neighborhood about whether or not this pilot is a success. The pilot feels like a Band-Aid approach to me. I don't understand why there cannot be off-site parking with a shuttle that goes. There has to be something more permanent. You talked about 250 spaces that you had originally, and you're down now to way, way fewer, not even half of that. So I just think there's a huge problem here that's not being faced. I'm also want to know, how will these concerns that we're expressing tonight be answered? And I was quite taken aback and appreciative of the teacher who spoke, who's been on these planning committees for the last 4 years, expressing all of the same concerns we're expressing here tonight, and they've gone basically unheard or unresponded to, which is troubling because I feel proud of this city and I can't understand why we're not taking into consideration the taxpayers that live nearby, the teachers and the students who are challenged every day.
Thank you, Susan Ayers, for your comment. Kate, who is next?
Next, we have Jack Connolly, followed by Vicki Cochran, followed by Carl Verge.
Okay, Jack Connolly, you should be able to go off mute.
Hi, am I on now?
You are.
Oh, great, thank you. This is Jack Connolly, a resident of 17 Winslow Ave, and I'm a former Ward 6 and city councilor at large for quite a while. I'm a little concerned tonight because this is the second time in 3 months that the traffic board has had to hear an appeal of the traffic commission, which for the previous 10 years, the traffic board had basically been laid dormant. So it's a concern because the same concerns here in Highland Ave about parking as they were on College Ave regarding the removal of parking there. So there's a major concern about parking. And the key point is the city is doing a citywide parking study. And why is it that we're making decisions about parking when the citywide parking study is not complete? I believe it's costing a couple $100,000 to do so. So I think it makes sense to hit the pause button on any decisions about this until that study is complete. And the last time I checked, the residents of the community have certainly been discriminated against based on what I've heard so far this evening. And yes, the teachers are absolutely in need of spaces. The opportunity for a shuttle from another location, I'm not so sure how much of that's been explored, but that certainly would make better sense, especially in light of the fact the residents are here, not to mention the businesses you've heard from this evening. So my concern also is, where are the members of the traffic commission who made this vote? Are they here to talk about the testimony they heard? Did they have a public hearing before their meeting to advise members of the public who certainly were not appraised or notified of it? I'm a member of the Chamber Board of Commerce, Somerville Chamber Board of Commerce. We did not hear of any of these concerns at any time. We weren't contacted by economic development people. So there's a lot of questions that have gone unanswered. I wish tonight that you will make the decision to put this on hold, void the decision, send it back to the traffic commission, have a true public hearing where all members of the community can be
Your
heard.
time's up. Thank you, Jack Connolly, for your comment. Kate, who is next?
Next, we have Vicki Cochran, followed by Carl Verge, followed by Teresa Brown. There are a total of 7 hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Vicki Cochran, you should be able to go off mute.
Hi, this is Vicki Cochran. I am a resident of 172 Crookstall Road in Newton, which is right next to Newton North High School. I am a new teacher to Somerville High School, hired in August. I've previously been teaching in Boston, so I have 3 different cities experience with parking. My opinion is I feel for the residents. I agree with many of the statements spoken about lack of parking, especially for the seniors needing rides and needing medicines and things like that. I don't know if we could do one side for residents, one side for staff, or something like that as a possible solution, because yes, folks aren't driving as much, but we can't use the T. Like with where my son is in school, where I live, the green line is not functional, the red line's not functional. And so we need alternative non-shuttle based options is the strong preference. I don't know what the story was with the parking garage that wasn't. I also didn't know that there was a pilot study. So information at the staff level would also be helpful. I agree with the gentleman who just spoke that maybe if there is a citywide study being done, we should pause things so that the full citywide view can come into play. But otherwise, the teachers need to park, and staff, residents also need to park. And I really don't know, without an actual parking lot, what the solution is. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki Cochran. Kate, who is next?
We have 5 hands raised at this time. Next, we have Carl Virch, followed by Teresa Brown, followed by Aaron S. Weber.
Thank you. Carl Virch, you should be able to go off mute.
Hi, my name is Carl Virch. I'm a resident at 80 Highland Avenue. I would just like to speak to the fact of the communication of this issue. I think I echo a lot of the things that other residents have said about the kind of inherent ableism in a lot of these things. I know we have residents within my building who are not able to get around well and have, you know, issues with mobility and need their cars. Also, the fact that the way most of my neighbors were alerted to this was by getting a ticket on a morning in the last couple of weeks. There's a poor Ford across the street that must be on vacation or something and has gotten about 10 tickets because of this new thing that was not communicated well. It's about a 2-inch high sign on the street that was you know, posted, but if we've lived here for years, we have no reason to be checking the street signs. So I think there was really poor communication about this pilot, about kind of this whole program and how it's going on. I appreciate those who started this petition so we can kind of, you know, be alerted about it. I definitely feel for all of the teachers, and I understand their struggle, and, you know, I support that, you know, there should have definitely been other parking options and a potential parking garage provided for them. I think, yeah, you really can't just eliminate, you know, 60% of parking with a new project and you kind of expect that to flow into an area that is already limited with parking. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carl Virch, for your comment. Kate, who is next?
We have 5 people with their hands raised. Next, we have Teresa Brown, followed by Aaron S. Weber, followed by Ada Toro.
Okay, Teresa Brown, you should be able to go off mute.
Good evening. Much of what I've heard in the notes I've been making are exactly what I've been thinking about this. I'm a resident of Summit Avenue. I've lived here almost 20 years and I feel like I'm being forced out of Somerville. I worry about parking every time there's street sweeping. Can I leave in the morning? Can I do an errand? Can I do laundry? Can I get back on my block or maybe the block behind me? And this will only become worse. I think if they could move street sweeping to the evening hours, maybe that would help after school has ended for the day. Another point is the driveways in my neighborhood are full. People who have driveways use them. They are such a luxury. So I don't think that's going to make a difference. I'd like us to change the 48-hour, I believe it's 48-hour limit for parking in one spot because I don't use my car. I take the T, I walk, I take the bus, but I have to move my car and then I worry about where will I move it? I need a spot. I would like to make sure that the study takes a way to look at if there will be an increase in the number of parking tickets. I was surprised the previous speaker mentioned that, because I think that's going to be a real indication of how hard it is to find a spot to park and be able to get your car out of that spot by 7 a.m. in the morning. And the last comment is, yes, if I hadn't seen a flyer on a post walking to work, if someone hadn't knocked on my door last night and taped it to my door, I wouldn't have known about this meeting. So I appreciate your time, but I really think you need to find a way to resolve this issue for the residents.
Thank you, Teresa Brown. Kate, who is next?
Next, we have Aaron S. Weber, followed by Ada Toro, followed by Crystal H. We have a total of 4 people in the queue.
Okay, Aaron S. Weber, you should be able to go off mute.
Unmute. There we go. Hi, my name is Aaron Weber. I live at 32 Summit Avenue. Hi, neighbors. Hi, Sue. I have not at all noticed parking being a problem during this construction project. I have no idea, with all due respect, what you're talking about. It is not a problem to park on Summit Ave. We're 3 blocks away from the school. Sometimes I see teachers or construction workers, but it has not been a problem. With respect to the desire to replace all of that green space, if you think the people who are concerned about parking are upset, wait till you hear from Green and Open Somerville. Wait till you hear from the people who have worked on Summer Vision 2030, Summer Vision 2040, which through an exhaustive process of community engagement have determined that the city's goals are to reduce car dependency and increase green space. Is that ableist? Absolutely not. Not everybody can ride a bike, but not everybody can drive a car either. Now, I do have a car. We do park on the street. And there has been one time that we have not been able to park directly in front of our street in the past 5 years. And that was during a snow emergency, and it was a block away. It was fine. This is a non-event. With respect to that Ford Focus on Highland Avenue that's getting all those tickets, it's not getting tickets for parking in the school zone. It's in a bus stop. That car is parked in a bus stop. I am shocked that it has not been towed. This is honestly, I don't see what the deal is with this petition. It's fine. It's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron Weber, for your comment. Kate, who is next?
We have a total of 2 people in the queue. Next, we have, I thought we had Ada Turo next, but we don't see the hand. I'm just gonna double check. Or our chair, would you like to double check or?
I don't see Ada Toro's hand raised. I believe Crystal H is next.
Okay.
Crystal H, you should be able to go off mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hi, so there is no solution that everyone will like, and maybe no solution that everyone will be willing to live with based on comments here tonight. And I'm really sorry that that's pretty clear from the discussions. We have conflicting priorities at play. Disabled folks have access needs, teachers need to be able to get to work, residents have families, seniors have home aides. I hear a lot of anger and frustration, and I just hope that folks can come together to find solutions. If there's one thing I've learned from working on MAMAS, Mutual Aid of Medford and Somerville, it's that we all have needs and we all have something to offer. And maybe this is a situation where people can figure out what they have to offer that somebody else might need. If residents aren't using their driveways on your street, maybe those residents could rent out their driveways or even just offer them up to their neighbors. Maybe people can share cars. That's what's happening with my household. Anyway, sorry, I can't give you the solutions to this problem, but I want to offer that there are solutions, and I don't know that they'll make everyone happy, but hopefully they will meet our needs and priorities. And I do think that green spaces and summer vision are needs and priorities for the future of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal H., for your comment. Kate, who is next?
Next, we have Tom Lamar, and then there is no one with their, after that, there's no one with their hands raised at this time.
Okay, Tom Lamar, you should be able to go off mute.
Hi, good evening. Tom Lamar, 17 Cross Street. I wanted to briefly say that I support this pilot and I ask the board to reject the appeal. This is a difficult situation, but overall, I think this is a pretty thoughtful compromise to prioritize parking for teachers for 2 hours a day while allowing general availability for 22 hours a day. Seems like a pretty fair compromise. A couple of things I wanted to remind folks of. One, I heard some impressions that maybe as there is new development, that might add more cars on the street. I wanted to remind folks that the zoning for much of here, and should probably be for more of here, is that any building built without many off-street parking spaces will generally be ineligible for parking permits. So if anything, to the extent that there is more new development, I would expect that to reduce demand for on-street parking rather than increase it. Finally, one concern I thought was that perhaps the Chamber of Commerce was unaware. I was a little curious, so I just looked at the minutes for the Traffic Commission meeting, and I did note that the president of the Chamber of Commerce commented at the discussion at the time. So I would hope that folks were aware of that publicly noticed meeting. Again, this is a difficult situation, but this appears to be a pretty thoughtful compromise and worth having a pilot on. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Lamar. Kate, I see we have a few more hands up.
We do. We've just passed the 7:30 mark, so wondered if you would like to reshare the Zoom instructions.
I would, Kate. Thank you.
Just bear with me. I'm going to bring them up on the screen. Thank you for your patience. Okay, are those visible on your screen?
They are.
Okay, I can, or would you like me to read them out loud again?
Sure, thank you.
So for those who are participating in this hearing, to provide a public comment, you can raise or please select the raise hand function. You can find this either through your reactions button in your toolbar, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button. In some Zoom versions, you might find this directly in your toolbar or through the participants window. We will call on you when it's your turn and unmute your microphone. We'll share the queue of raised hands so that everyone in the Zoom session has an idea of who is up next. If you are joining by phone this evening, you can press *9 to raise your hand. And if you have any technical difficulties at any time, please reach out to myself, Kate White, by email at kwhite@somervillema.gov or by phone at 617-366-7293.
And I just wanted to remind members of the public, when speaking, please state for the record your name, address, and the name of any organization you represent, if applicable. Please speak directly and clearly due to the fact that these proceedings are being recorded. Statements from the public are limited to 2 minutes each. The chair reserves the right to interrupt comments that extend beyond 2 minutes so that everybody has an opportunity to provide testimony. Okay, Kate, where are we with the queue?
We currently have 2 people's hands raised. First, we have Cassandra Virch, followed by Deb.
Okay, Cassandra Virch, you should be able to go off mute.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cassandra Virch. I live at 80 Highland Avenue, apartment 203. I live directly across from the high school. I do not agree with this whatsoever for many reasons. I do feel there was a lot of poor planning in terms of the high school. If there was a parking garage and a parking plan in place when the blueprints were made and such, I'm very confused as to why it was taken away. It feels that the residents are suffering for a mistake that is not ours. I also have to, my job, I am a program coordinator. I do not work in Somerville, but I do work with adults ranging in ages 16 to 80 with disabilities. And it is very disheartening to hear how many people are not seeing and just hearing without anyone really speaking about how this is really going to affect them. I think it's something that should be taken into consideration, and I really don't think it has. In terms of the parking tickets, I did hear something about how everyone got a ticket because that's where a bus stops. That is very inaccurate. We did get a ticket here, and it had absolutely nothing to do with it being a bus stop. It was rather the fact that some parking thing had been implemented overnight and we had no idea about it. We have lived here for almost 3 years and we've never had a problem on the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra Birch, for your comment. Kate, please read the rest of the queue.
We have one hand raised. Their name is Deb.
Okay. Deb, you should be able to go off mute.
Hi, this is Deb Solwin. I live at 66 Putnam Street, and I am a member of the working committee as well. I think that there are just a couple of points on behalf of the owners that I don't think have been made yet, so I wanted to make sure that they were made. I do think that this proposal is unfair to the neighbors. The neighbors, the city hall staff and teachers have been given a number of permits to park in the residential neighborhood initially. So that has diluted the spaces that are available to the residents. This proposal further dilutes what they have for available spaces. And I think that that's an unfair burden to ask the owners to bear. And it's not a question of the spaces not being available from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Once teachers park there in the morning, they're there until 4. So those spaces are unavailable to residents, to businesses until school gets out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think the last point I want to make is there really has been no presentation on the impact to the residents or what's being done to mitigate that impact. If there are no spaces for teachers at 7 in the morning, then where are the residents to park? I think it's unfair to expect that residents will get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go find a different space to park so that others can come and use those spaces. That said, I am totally sympathetic to the teachers. I know that they are frustrated by not being able to find a place to park, but so are the owners. And the owners this would be an additional imposition against the owners when there have already been a number of them. So for that reason, I am opposed to this proposal.
Thank you, Deb, for your comment. Kate, do you see any other hands raised?
I do not see any other hands raised.
Okay, is there, thank you. First of all, I wanted to thank the city staff for showing up and staying so late to answer questions and give their presentation. I wanted to thank everyone for their testimony. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? If so, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. As I mentioned at the outset of this hearing, I'm sorry, so anybody who has not already provided comment, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. As I mentioned at the outset of the meeting, we also received 32 pieces of written testimony, and the board has taken that into consideration as well. Kate, I believe Susan Ayers has already commented, so I see one new person, is that correct?
Yes, Ahmed.
Okay, so Ahmed, you should be able to unmute. We can't hear you if you are speaking.
Ahmed, we've given you permission to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the effort done by the city. I live in 62 Highland Ave. My name is Ahmed. I live in 62 Highland Ave. I just live in front of the school. I used to suffer a lot coming late home from work to find a parking spot during the street cleaning days. And now again with the COVID, the culture of work changed a lot. We've been working from home most of the time. So it's really a challenge to leave home during the day and come back to find a spot. I really just wish you consider that. That means we need to stay home most of the days, and it's already a challenge for us finding parking lot with the current situation before even removing those spots. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahmed, for your comment. Is there anybody else who has not yet provided comment who would like to? Please raise your hand if so. Okay, Kate, I don't see any hands from people who have not yet commented. Do you?
I do not.
All right. So again, thank you everyone for coming out and providing comment. I'm going to open it up for discussion by members of the board. And I'm going to start by making a motion that we take a 10-minute recess. So I will make a motion that the board take a 10-minute recess.
I will second that motion.
Call the roll for that motion.
Yes. Aaron Scher,
Yes.
Alex Epstein,
Yes.
Joan Liu.
Yes.
With all three in favor, that motion passes. I'm just going to, while we take that recess, Chair, can you tell us how long that recess will be?
Yes, my clock says 7:46. Let's reconvene at 7:56. Thank you.
Members of
May
the
I
public,
suggest a 10-minute timer using the
Oh.
same timer?
I can do that. I also have a slide that indicates recess.
Okay. We'll be back at 7:56 for discussion. Thank you. Okay, Kate. It is 7:56. Could I suggest that we start with a roll call to make sure that we have quorum?
Yes. Era Sure,
Yes, here.
Alex Epstein,
Here.
Joan Liu.
Here.
With all members present, we have quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we just finished public comments. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. So I want to open it up to discussion by the board. So I will open it up, and you know, I'll start by saying that I want to just speak to some of the aspects of the petition that speak to the substance of the decision. And you know, I just want to remind everyone and state my opinion that it's not an opinion. Somerville streets and curbs are public property, and that they're owned by the city, and that the goal is to manage them to optimize the public good. And in my opinion, and from what we heard tonight, you know, there aren't a lot of great options here that serve everybody. And to me, it appears that the city made a good faith effort to balance resident needs, particularly for overnight parking, with the dire need of teachers of our teachers of our high school to get to school on time and educate our students, and that they look to incorporate the results from 2 parking studies in 2018 and 2019 that looked at parking utilization in the neighborhood and parking utilization for potentially over 150 displaced spots when they looked at these at solving this issue. And as we heard tonight, you know, proposing a short-term pilot, a 1-year pilot that acknowledges that this isn't necessarily a permanent solution, and that a permanent solution has to balance other modes of transportation and other solutions, including the Green Line, that are not yet available for our commuting teachers and our other school staff. So I will stop there and see if other board members have comments.
I don't know
You wanna
how I also, it definitely seems like a hard situation here. I know people join at all points of the meeting, so I did want to reemphasize that the city did in fact say that you are allowed to park in the teacher parking spots during those hours on non-school days. There was a clarification point needed on what's constituted as a school day. But as of, since there's a snow emergency tonight, you can actually park in those spots on street sweeping days. I thought that was kind of a good idea to look at evening hours. I mean, we can't, as this group, hold the city to those suggestions, but I strongly encourage the city to look at those options. A lot of comments about people with disabilities impacted. I thought that this retained the accessible parking spots. Am I incorrect in that? Or is the problem that we don't have enough and we need to look into adding some more locations? I don't know, that's something we should look at. I know there was a business owner that said, was it on School in Highland, that a lot of their customers are disabled, and so maybe the city needs to work with that business owner directly to kind of establish some sort of accessible parking spot for those customers.
Perhaps I'll go next. I went back and I watched the traffic commission meeting video recording. I read the minutes, which were detailed from November, and from everything I've heard, and from the city's presentation, I have not seen any evidence that any of the rules or processes that are currently in place for operating the traffic commission and for arriving at the decision that was made by the commission did not follow any of the rules that we have in place. So as far as I can tell, that was all done properly. And there are understandably some constituents who are dissatisfied, who are frustrated with that decision, and others who are satisfied with that decision. I think there's a bigger picture here of perhaps the Traffic Commission should take a cue from mobility, from the construction newsletter that the city has, and maybe have a social media account and better publicize its work and better publicize previews of key issues that are coming up. That is an issue that, in my opinion, is outside the purview of this traffic board, but I did want to voice it on the record that may be a positive takeaway here. That there are important decisions that come up before that public body, and they would be worthy of publicizing and increasing stakeholder awareness and frankly, just everyone knowing about them, because they do affect everyone in the city. I also think, while I sympathize with many of the people who've spoken here today, at the end of the day, the teachers and the students and the quality of the educational experience that takes place in the Somerville schools affects everyone at a city level, and in my mind takes priority over more local issues, as it were, when it comes to something that is a public space, as the chair was saying. Public parking, or really vehicle storage, storing private vehicles in a public space, is a choice we make for the good of the users of that public space. And we do have a tragedy of the commons situation where we are not necessarily pricing our parking and allocating the supply of parking in a way that meets demand best and that meets it at the right price. We don't have parking permits that are $150 a month or $100 a month, even though that's what you can reasonably get if you are renting out a driveway. So there's definitely a mismatch there. And again, outside the purview of this traffic board, but just recognizing the bigger picture, that there is a tragedy of the commons, and that breeds frustration. And until we do resolve that at a more systemic level, pricing our parking the way other cities do, that's going to continue. I applaud what the city is doing as far as its flexibility to reevaluate. And this isn't just going. It sounds to me, my understanding is this is not just a fixed plan that's going to be in place for 365 days and not going to get revisited. It sounds like there will be points along the way at which data will be collected and the performance of the pilot will be measured. So that's one thing there. I also want to acknowledge that the students and the faculty they've been through a lot in the pandemic. It's been a really rough couple of years for school, and there's a lot of absenteeism. There are other issues in the schools, and the last thing we need is to heap more disruption on top of that. So I'm in support of efforts to make the educational experience reliable and high quality, because that's an investment in our future as a city. I have some other comments, but I would like to cede some time to my fellow board members here.
You don't have to cede time, Alex. We have all night. So, but I did want to.
Is a snowstorm coming?
I wanted to respond to your comments about the procedural issues, and I would echo what you said. I agree that the city, the parking department, mobility department, and the traffic commission certainly followed all of the rules and regulations, both in providing notice and in coming to their decision. But as several of our speakers mentioned, and I agree, changes to parking regulations have become more frequent and more wide-reaching, and certainly more fraught for lots of different parties over the past couple of years. One of the speakers noted some of our long-term policy documents like Summer Vision, like Vision Zero, like Climate Forward, and these will inevitably mean that these trends will continue. So I would echo my colleagues' statements in really encouraging, you know, all aspects of the city to maximize outreach and transparency, try new things, make sure that you know, everyone has a chance to be heard, you know, in the decision-making process and at all steps of the decision-making process, and to invite feedback and allow time for public input. And I also wanted to echo, you know, my understanding of the city's willingness to be flexible on this pilot, and also to, you know, provide data along the way and assessment and analysis in a mid-year point, and get some of that public feedback. So I would second your encouragement of the city to try to make sure that these kind of issues are really noticed well and really allow people to provide input.
I will pile on to that. And I said this at the last traffic board meeting as well, but I think that happened December something, which was after this November 18th meeting that we are talking about. While the city met the regulations needed for this meeting and notice, I wish the city would go above and beyond that. Understand that those rules were written in a different time, and now we have more social media, and that type of information needs to come out more for people to reach out, whether it's social media, whether it's like knocking on doors, for people who are here who clearly care about their parking spots and how their spots are utilized. I just want to say the Traffic Commission meets every second Thursday of every month. You can find those meetings on the city website. So mark your Thursdays if you are concerned in the future. That's kind of what I want to say along with that. Not doing anything as far as back to this issue doesn't seem like a good thing. It doesn't make the teachers go away. It doesn't make them stop circling the roads. And so I do like the idea of dedicating some of these parking. We're not, as far as I'm led to believe, we are not giving an additional 50 spots to teachers or more permits for teachers to use. It's specifically drawing attention to a specific park that they should look to park first before they go elsewhere and start circling the neighborhood for more parking spots. And I feel like that is the right move. One thing I would also encourage as part of the pilot feedback is that you look at moving some of those spots so that the people on Highland Street could potentially park there instead, and try to move some of the spots to the end. I noticed somebody had written in the chat that there aren't enough T passes for students. So that seems like something that's actionable that maybe the city can look into as well. There's not really a great solution here. Brad said that there will be a follow-up maybe sometime in the spring. So I hope that you will get some feedback out and have like a public hearing about how the pilot is going. That's kind of my comment here.
I sense agreement among my colleagues that there's strong reason to try to elevate the public knowledge, the public awareness of the Traffic Commission's deliberations and issues, and to increase their public profile. And I think that would be beneficial, as opposed to this traffic board serving as, in essence, a second opinion. Because I would like to opine that that is not our role here. That is not the role of this traffic board to offer an alternative opinion, a second parent, if you will, you know, when shopping for a better answer, when the substance of a decision is not met well by constituents. I think improving the process upstream in terms of awareness would serve those ends better and lead to better decisions that involve involvement from the entire community. So I would just like to bring that up, and given that this is the second traffic board meeting and both have involved a large substance of the petition has been insufficient notice, as well as dissatisfaction with the decision of the traffic commission. I would like to recommend that more attention be paid by the city simply to the upstream decision making, and for the role of this traffic board not to be the second guesser of the traffic commission.
Okay. Well, I think, are there any other, Joan, do you have any other comments? All right.
I do not.
I did happen to look up, there was a oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Alex.
I did dive in. There was a comment made during public comment about the transit area parking restriction for on-street parking. I did look that up and was able to cross-reference that to Chapter 11.2, Section 7 of the zoning ordinance, which appears to affect the entire, if not most if not the entire area where this pilot will entail. So the pilot is only 1 year. It's unlikely there's going to be a lot of development in a year, but the commenter was correct that over time, new developments on Highland Avenue will not have on-street parking permit privileges, and demand for those spaces will go down over time.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion regarding the 1-year parking regulation changes approved by the Somerville Traffic Commission on November 18th, 2021. I'd like to make a motion that the traffic board affirm the adoption, alteration, or repeal of that rule or regulation.
Eric, can you clarify? Those are 3 different terms. Do you mean to affirm the decision or?
Affirm the decision of the parking commission.
Oh, I think I just want to establish it for the record.
Yes, so I make a motion that the traffic board affirm the decision of the parking commission that was made on November 18th, 2021.
May I ask a clarifying question of the chair? Do you mean the traffic commission?
Yes, I'm sorry, what did I just say? I would like to make a motion that we affirm the decision that the traffic commission made on November 18th, 2021.
I would second that motion.
Okay, Kate, will you lead us through a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Arisher.
Yes.
Alex Epstein.
Yes.
Joan Liu.
Yes.
With all votes in favor, that motion passes.
Okay. I want to thank everyone again, city staff, for the presentation and answering the questions, all of the commenters who came to speak tonight, as well as those who wrote in, and also the other members of the traffic board for their time and their deliberation. And with that, I think we will end this traffic board meeting. So I will make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that motion.
Kate, could you take us through a vote?
Yes. Arisher.
Yes.
Alex Epstein.
Yes.
Joan Liu.
Yes.
With all 3 votes in favor, that motion passes.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone again, and have a good evening. Good night.
Thank you.